She thought noon was safe and the kitchen was silent. But the husband, who never raised his voice, raised something else. The footage. You won't believe how he turned a neighborhood party into the cleanest justice you'll ever see. Saturday morning in Decatur looked like a realtor's brochure. Clean sidewalks, a sky the blue of fresh laundry, and the Hamiltons across the street already calibrating the angle of their yard flag. Daniel Reed swept his front steps like he was polishing the first line of an apology he never owed anyone. He'd already hit the gym, roasted coffee beans in the small drum roaster he'd tinkered together in grad school, and scheduled a surprise dinner for his wife, Olivia, at the tiny Italian place on Ponce that still folded napkins into lilies. Normal. Normal was good. Normal meant the ground didn't move. The only non-normal thing Daniel had done this week was install a compact smart camera in the kitchen. He framed it like a practicality. Their new rescue dog, Maple, had separation anxiety, and he wanted to check in while he was at work. He told Olivia the same thing. She'd laughed and called him dramatic. He'd shrugged, equally dramatic, and mounted the camera near the top of the pantry, the lens tucked between a trailing pothos and a jar of wooden spoons. It saw everything: the breakfast nook, the French doors, the island where Olivia spread out her laptop and notes when she worked from home. At noon, Daniel headed to Publix to pick up the cake he'd pre-ordered. Lemon with blueberry compote, Olivia's favorite. He stood in the checkout line behind a guy in a Falcons hoodie arguing about oranges when his phone vibrated. Motion detected. Kitchen. He glanced out of reflex. The clip opened to an empty room, sunlight striping the floor. Then the French doors eased open. A man stepped inside. Daniel's first thought was contractor, the polo shirt, the sensible shoes. But the man moved like he owned a key he wasn't supposed to have. Maple didn't bark. She was at doggy day care. Olivia walked into frame 2 seconds later, quick and breathless, like she'd sprinted from the hallway. She touched the man's chest with familiar fingers. His hand found the back of her neck with the efficiency of someone who'd practiced. Daniel didn't breathe. The clip didn't care. "I have 10 minutes, Olivia said. She smiled, nervous, jittery, lit from inside with a voltage Daniel had never seen at noon. "Always making me earn it," the man teased, and the mic picked up the kind of low laugh people use when they should not be laughing. They kissed in Daniel's kitchen, where he kept the spices alphabetized and the knives honed. The man's face turned just enough for Daniel to catch the profile. Strong jaw, salt and pepper hair, the kind of vanity stubble that telegraphed confidence. He wore a campus ring, Georgia Tech maybe, glinting when he lifted Olivia onto the edge of the island like it was the most natural thing in the world to rewrite the geometry of a marriage at midday. "Bag," Olivia whispered, and the man fished for something in his pocket. Daniel closed the clip with a thumb that didn't feel attached to his hand. The cashier asked him if he wanted paper or plastic. Daniel said paper, in the calm voice he used at work, when budgets bled and everyone needed to believe they wouldn't. He paid for the cake. He walked out to his car and sat with the engine off, forehead pressed to the cool of the steering wheel. The phone brightened again. Motion detected. He didn't open it. He watched a woman push a cart across the lot, a toddler chewing the corner of a cereal box in the seat, both oblivious to the fact that the world could change for someone 10 parking spaces away and still not make a sound. On the drive home, he narrated an alternate explanation. Every rational substitution the brain will pull out of its pockets when truth arrives without an invitation. Client. Joke. Old friend. Hail Mary. By the time he hit the neighborhood sign with its aspirational cursive, The narration had exhausted itself. The camera didn't lie. It also didn't care about the peculiar intimacy of ordinary betrayal. The borrowed mug, the way Olivia straightened a skewed cookbook as if tidiness could make sin neat. Olivia was on the couch when he walked in, legs tucked under her, hair in the knot that meant she'd had a productive morning. "You got the cake," she said. "Let me see." He set the box on the island. The island. The knife block looked like a lineup of witnesses. "You have a visitor?" he asked. He kept his tone casual, a pebble tossed into deep water. Olivia blinked. "You mean Naomi?" "She dropped off the serving platter I lent her." Daniel lifted the lid on the cake to show her the lemon frosting whirled like a hurricane or a fingerprint. "Pretty." She kissed his cheek. Light, practiced. "You're spoiling me." Daniel smiled because anyone watching would expect him to smile. He could still do expectations. It was specific self-control, the adult assembly required part of marriage. When Olivia took a long shower that afternoon, Daniel went to the garage and sat on the step between concrete and tile, where oil spots bled into house shoes. He opened the camera app. The second clip showed fast hands and a hurried goodbye. The man left through the French doors, glancing over his shoulder in a way that suggested he knew luck was a finite resource. The face was clearer in this angle. Definitely mid-40s, well kept. The sort of face Daniel recognized in conference rooms and charity galas. The sort of face that shook other faces and never glanced at the name tag twice. Daniel saved the videos to an external drive. He saved them to another he'd stashed in a box labeled Holiday Lights. He changed the camera's storage setting to back up to a cloud he paid for under his old college email, a $1 redundancy you only buy if you spent your 20s fixing other people's hard drives and learning that redundancy is really just a polite word for fear. At 4, Olivia came down in the navy dress she wore to dinners that wanted to be important without looking like they did. "I made a reservation for 7, he said. Surprise. She lit up, an honest brightness, or the muscle memory of it. "You're good to me," she said, and there was truth in that, like there had always been truth in it. At the restaurant, Daniel asked about her week. She told him about a new account at work, a client who wanted a campaign but didn't know what they were selling. He made her laugh. He was still good at that. He watched her hands when she sipped water, the way she set her phone face down without thinking. When his own buzzed on the table, motion detected, he silenced it and kept nodding at the story about the client who thought QR codes were a personality. He kissed her forehead in the parking lot. He drove home under a sky that had the nerve to be perfect. That night, while Olivia brushed her teeth, Daniel went downstairs and leaned against the kitchen counter like he was trying to learn the granite by heart. He felt the house breathing, the undetectable hum of electricity through walls, the tick of settling wood, the quiet arrogance of a home that believed itself safe. His phone face lit the dark. He rewound the noon clip and let it play in silence, then watched the way Olivia had smoothed the corner of the dish towel with her thumb. It was so mundane. It was offensive. He slept on his side of the bed and woke at 3 to a dream where his mouth filled with pennies. He got up, drank water, and stood at the window with the blinds barely open, the neighborhood sleeping like a promise it had no intention of keeping. Morning arrived anyway. He made coffee. Olivia smiled. Maple snored on the rug. Daniel logged into the camera portal, not because he needed anywhere else to go, but because the new day demanded a new task, and this counted. In the list of archived clips, a folder he hadn't noticed appeared. Favorites. The system's auto tag. It selected clips with faces. The top thumbnail was a freeze frame where the man's jaw and ring were bright as confession. Daniel tapped it. In the reflection of the oven door, he saw something else. Another angle, faint but there. The suggestion of a car parked at the curb with the nose just into frame. The grill, distinctive. He felt something like oxygen return because detail was a ladder, and he knew how to climb. He cross-referenced with the doorbell camera. There it was, a licorice black SUV with a chrome accent, like punctuation. The timestamp said 12:04 p.m. The plates were just out of focus. Daniel downloaded both clips and sent them to himself with subject line housekeeping, because irony was a valve, and he needed one. Across the street, the Hamiltons hoisted their flag to exactly the angle they wanted. The neighborhood jogger in neon breezed past like nothing in the world had ever been complicated. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Carlos, his best friend since freshman year, who'd moved to Avondale a mile away. Game tonight? Hawks. Daniel typed, "Let's do it," because a schedule could be armor, too. At the game, in the yawning brightness of an arena built on the idea that noise might exorcise ghosts, Daniel told Carlos he was thinking about upgrading the security system. "New cameras?" Carlos said, crunching popcorn. "Yeah," Daniel said. "You know the ones that read plates?" Carlos shot him a sidelong look, perceptive enough to be annoying. "What's up?" "Raccoons," Daniel said. "Trash bandits." Carlos snorted. "Get a metal can, man." "Working on it." He wasn't. He was learning the make of that SUV from a car forum, comparing the curve of the grille to models like he used to identify birds as a kid. The thread of it kept him from unraveling. In bed, Olivia drifted a palm over his chest. He didn't shrink. He didn't lean in. He lay very still and listened to her breathe, the steady proof of a body he had built a life around. What do you do the day after the world tilts? You go to work. You answer emails the way a surgeon sutures, precise, unhurried, focused on the neatness of closure. You say yes to a meeting. You close your office door and watch the clip again, a private screening in which you are both audience and witness. At lunch, Daniel drove the long way back through the neighborhood. A black SUV turned onto their street, the same design flourish at the grill. He slowed. The driver, a man in a polo. The jaw. The ring. The man gave Daniel the polite, non-committal wave of neighborly acknowledgement. Daniel returned it before his mind had time to vote. The SUV pulled into a driveway 2 houses down and across, Scott and Lila Mercer's place, the tidy gray ranch with the immaculate hydrangeas. Scott Mercer, PTA treasurer, flooring company owner, friendly at the block party, in that way people are when friendliness is their brand. Lila taught yoga and made a granola so earnest it tasted like an apology for sugar. Olivia had brought her a charcuterie board when they moved in. Daniel had helped Scott move a grill, the aluminum gleaming in the sun like a promise. Daniel parked around the corner and sat until his blood cooled. The world had adjusted itself into a more dangerous geometry. It was not a ghost. It had a driveway. That evening, Naomi stopped by with a bottle of wine and the easy mess of someone who didn't knock because history said she didn't have to. She and Olivia laughed in the kitchen while Daniel answered an email he wasn't reading. When Naomi left, Daniel caught her at the door. "You ever notice a black SUV on our street lately?" he asked. Casual. Pebble. Water. Naomi froze for half a second too long. "You mean Scott's?" "Scott's," Daniel repeated, watching her face. She spun the bottle by the neck. "He's around." "How around?" Naomi's eyes darted toward the kitchen and softened. Dan, she said in a voice that had caution braided into it, married people complicate their own weather. Don't stand out there in a storm with a kite. Naomi left before he could decide whether to be mad. Olivia asked from the kitchen, "Everything good?" "Yeah," he said. "We're fine." He plugged a thumb drive into his laptop and dragged the clips into a folder named Maple Vet Records, then backed them up again. He started a plain text document and noted timestamps like a bookkeeper of grief. He slept in the guest room that night, lying to the ceiling about his back. On Wednesday, Daniel saw Scott laughing with a delivery guy on the sidewalk. That broad, everybody's favorite dad laugh that made you forget to check your wallet. Daniel waved. Scott saluted with 2 fingers and a grin, the audacity of daylight on his side. Daniel wondered if the ring left a mark on Olivia's neck, and if she brushed concealer over it in the mirror with the same care she used when a flyaway hair refused to obey. Friday, Daniel made pancakes. Olivia pretended she wasn't watching the guest room door. He brought her a plate with blueberries forming a crooked smile. She smiled back. They were very polite. He told her he had an early errand and left. He did not. He parked around the corner again and watched the street from a spot where he was just another sedan trying to be a tree. The black SUV slid in at 11:58, a monorail gliding to its stop. Scott stepped out. He looked both ways like an actor remembering the blocking. He walked straight to the side gate of Daniel's yard, not even bothering with pretense, and let himself in. Daniel's heart did not break. It changed function. He texted Carlos, "You free later?" "Need to talk." "Always," came the reply. Daniel watched the upstairs curtains. No silhouettes, no waving hand declaring wartime truths. He closed his eyes and counted to 100, the way he used to reset when code refused to compile. He turned the ignition and drove, not home, but to the hardware store, where a teenage employee named Marcus walked him through a display of security cameras like a boy giving a tour of a spaceship. Daniel bought 2 more, one for the living room, one for the back hall, plus a floodlight that could call noon out of midnight. He installed them while Olivia was at yoga, the screws biting into wood, with a purposeful, almost cheerful sound. The lenses blinked alive. The app populated with more rectangles of domestic surveillance. He was building a grid. He was making a map of honesty. That night, Olivia curled against him on the couch. "You've been quiet," she said. "Working," he said. "Deadline." "You're always steady. I should have married a storm chaser," she joked, then kissed his shoulder, as if affection could sand down the edges of a thing that wanted to remain sharp. Later, when the house slept, Daniel watched new clips, patient as a fisherman. He saw Olivia move through the kitchen with that quick efficiency he'd always admired, like she and the air had an understanding. He watched the hallway camera catch the tail of a movement that wasn't Maple. He didn't hit favorite. He already knew what mattered. On Sunday, he grilled in the backyard, a church of smoke and heat, neighbors calling across fences like weathermen. Scott leaned over the chain link, a beer in his hand, grin photogenic. "Smells good, Dan." "Tried and true rub," Daniel said, as if the sentence didn't taste like rust. "We're doing a block party next month," Scott said. "Lila's on the Make It Cute committee. You in?" Daniel kept his eyes friendly. "We'll be there." Olivia called from the kitchen window. "Do you have the tongs?" The sound made Daniel's ribs ache. He handed Scott a plate of ribs anyway. Scott called him a hero, easy as griping about parking. Daniel watched him walk away and thought, "You really think the world is your living room?" Then he thought, "It has been." Then, finally, not anymore. He took a breath that hurt going in and steadied coming out. He flipped the stakes like he was flipping to a new page and writing the first sentence with deliberate, legible care. On Monday, Daniel moved like a man who had decided to treat truth as data. He was good with data. It didn't require him to perform tenderness while bleeding. He started with the obvious. The plate number he couldn't quite read. He exported the doorbell clip, slowed it, sharpened it, until the numbers emerged like a Polaroid shaking itself awake. He had a friend from the old neighborhood, Darnell, who worked security at the arena, and, more importantly, never asked questions without a reason. Daniel texted the grainy still. "Can you confirm this plate belongs to a black SUV registered to Scott Mercer?" "Why do you sound like a cop?" Darnell wrote back, trying not to sound like a husband. "A beat. Yeah, it's his. You okay?" "I will be." He populated the timeline. Dates, times, entries, exits. The pattern wasn't random. Tuesdays and Fridays at noon. Occasionally a Wednesday, when Olivia had strategy calls. 10 to 18 minutes, the camera told him with its cruel, clinical accuracy. Enough time for ruin to become routine. At work, Daniel delivered a presentation like a man who owned a quiet room. His assistant, Priya, told him afterward, "You're terrifying when you're calm." He smiled. She wasn't wrong. He Googled Georgia's laws on recording in your own home, then stopped. He wasn't planning a courtroom drama. He was planning clarity. He made an appointment with a lawyer anyway, a gray-haired woman named Teresa, who wore crisp suits and sneakers under her desk. He walked in with a folder, walked out with options. "Premarital home," she said, tapping her pen against the mortgage document. "That's yours. Joint account. Have it before you have this conversation. Do not get cute. Do not get vindictive. Get clean. And document the hell out of everything, which you're obviously already doing." He wanted to laugh. He wanted to set the folder on fire. "What about proof?" he asked. "Georgia is a no-fault divorce state," Teresa said. "You don't need it to end the marriage. But people are not spreadsheets. If you're preparing for a conversation, prepare for the human parts too. People beg. People deflect. People become poets when accountability arrives." He left with a list that felt like instructions to disassemble a house and carry the pieces out without waking the neighbors. When he got home, Naomi's SUV was in their driveway. She sat at the kitchen table with Olivia, their heads close, their voices low. Both went quiet when Daniel walked in. "Hey," Naomi said, brittle brightness. "We're looking at paint colors. Lila swears there's a difference between eggshell and cloud." Olivia closed her laptop softly. "We're thinking of lightening the hallway." "Nice," Daniel said. He poured water he didn't need, the rush sounding louder than water ever had. Naomi's eyes tracked him with a concern that made him want to leave his own kitchen. He didn't. He took his glass to the back deck and stood in the shade like a man who'd forgotten what sun felt like. Naomi joined him 5 minutes later, hands stuffed in the pockets of her cardigan as if she could hide in them. "Dan," she said quietly, "don't make me your enemy." He stared at the hydrangeas. "Should I be asking why you're not my friend?" She held the question like something hot. "I told her to stop," Naomi said finally. "I told her she was playing with lit matches in a dry forest. She said," Naomi swallowed. "She said she was lonely. She said you were so steady you never shook. She wanted to feel knocked over." Daniel's laugh was hollow. "How creative." Naomi flinched. "I'm not defending it. I'm telling you, I didn't co-sign. I didn't tell you because it wasn't mine to tell, and because I hoped it was two stupid moments that would burn themselves out before anything else caught. I was wrong. Silence opened like a trapdoor. Daniel nodded once. Thanks for at least not lying to my face. Dan, she said again, and he could hear 10 years of Thanksgivings in his name. You have every right to do whatever you're going to do. Just don't scorch the earth. You like your earth. He turned the glass in his hands. I like the truth more. Naomi left like a woman carrying a fragile thing no one else could see. Olivia came out 10 minutes later, sat beside him, and leaned her shoulder against his arm. You good? She asked. He said, I'm here. It was not an answer. It was an address. That week, Daniel moved money. He made a list for Maple's dog food and added batteries, light bulbs, printer ink, the banal prep of someone who understands that grief also eats groceries. He called a locksmith and scheduled a consultation for next month, then canceled it. He wasn't ready to tilt from planning to irreversible. Thursday night, the neighborhood group chat buzzed, block party moved up. This Saturday. Weather looks perfect. Lila was coordinating, emojis marching across her messages like confetti. Daniel read it and felt an idea assemble with elegant, terrible logic. A public thing doesn't have to be a spectacle. It can be clarity in front of the correct witnesses. He told himself it wasn't revenge so much as an accounting. He did not fully believe himself. He also didn't care. Should we do it? Olivia asked from the couch, phone in her palm, face eager. It could be fun. Let's host dessert hereafter, Daniel said, and his voice didn't waver. We can have people over to see the new cabinets. Her smile was instantaneous. I love that. He texted Carlos, I need you here, Saturday night. Early. Tell me when to bring popcorn. Daniel spent Friday making the house look like a magazine. He shined the sink. He wiped baseboards because righteous men wipe baseboards. He tested the camera feeds, linked the kitchen cam to the living room TV via a small casting dongle, hid the remote in the drawer third from the left because he wanted to be the only person reaching for it. He printed nothing. He told no one else. He was learning that dignity could be preparation. Saturday, the street filled with folding tables and competitive deviled eggs. Neighborhood kids biked in figure eights. Someone's speaker took requests and regretted it. Scott flipped burgers in a t-shirt that said, Grill Sergeant. The joke too easy not to resent. Lila floated. Pretty, efficient, the kind of host who refills your lemonade before you realize it's low. She hugged Olivia, and Daniel tried not to watch the way Olivia's mouth trembled when she laughed. He tried and failed. Carlos arrived early, as instructed, in his crooked brim hat and moral support posture. You sure? He asked under his breath, out of the way of the potato salad scrum. I'm done being sure about the wrong things, Daniel said. Carlos squeezed his shoulder. Then I'm here. He scanned the crowd. He is dangerously tan. Daniel huffed a laugh, sudden and relieved, because that was Carlos's superpower. Drop a small joke like a sandbag so the balloon of panic didn't carry you away. As the sun dipped and the street tilted toward Fairy Light Pretty, people migrated toward Daniel and Olivia's house for dessert. Olivia moved through the entry with hosting muscle memory. Coats here, drinks there, laughter in between. She brushed Daniel's arm as she passed. His skin noticed before he did. In the living room, neighbors complimented the paint. Naomi stood near the bookshelf, eyes flicking between Daniel and Olivia like a metronome trying to find the correct tempo of concern. Lila set out an immaculate tart. Scott laughed with someone near the mantel, the sound an engine that had never once failed to start. Daniel waited until the room found its comfortable volume. He stood by the TV and lifted his glass. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "We've been in this house 2 years, and I still wake up some mornings surprised we get to live on a street where people return your trash cans to the curb facing the right way. It's a small thing, but small things add up." People chuckled, warm and easy. "I wanted to show you something," he said conversationally, as if this were just a cabinet hinge that closed soft, a little trick of home ownership. "We installed some new security cameras after Maple took up a side hustle as an escape artist. They're calibrated now. Pretty cool little system." Olivia turned, confusion knitting her forehead. Naomi straightened. Carlos slotted himself into a shadow by the stairs, a quiet sentinel. Daniel opened the drawer, took out the remote, and quietly cast the kitchen feed to the TV. The screen blinked to a frozen frame. Their kitchen at noon, bright as honesty. The room leaned toward the image because people are made to look where other people look. The play icon waited like a dare. Daniel pressed play. The screen came alive with sunlight puddling on tile. The angles were nice. The room looked like a catalog of good choices. The French doors opened. Scott came in. A split second later, Olivia entered from the hall, and the audio made no effort to soften itself for a room full of witnesses. "I have 10 minutes," she said on the TV. In the living room, the air collapsed. Conversations died mid-syllable. Someone's fork touched a plate with a small, treacherous chime. Lila's hands went to her mouth, as if she could catch the scene and push it back into the device. On the screen, Scott's hand found the back of Olivia's neck. In the room, Scott inhaled like a man who knows the names of all his exits and suddenly can't find a single door. Olivia's face emptied, then filled with a new expression. Shock rolling into calculation, then into a tiny, stubborn defiance that Daniel both recognized and wished he didn't. She looked at him. He didn't look away. He also didn't look anywhere else, which felt like the rarest kind of bravery. "Turn it off," Scott said, voice flat with command, the same tone he used to corral volunteers at the fall festival. Daniel did not turn it off. He let the clip run to its end. It wasn't long. It was more than enough. When the frame froze on the island's edge and the timestamp flickered its indifferent seconds, Daniel clicked mute and turned to the room. His voice, when he found it, was quiet. "This is my home," he said. "I installed cameras to keep it safe. I didn't know I was doing that in more ways than one." No one moved. The Fairfield twins, 12 and Farrell, were for once silent. Maple thumped her tail under the coffee table and then, sensing the temperature, tucked her head under her paw. "Dan," Olivia began, then stopped. The shape of his name in her mouth had never felt so foreign. Daniel lifted a hand, not to silence her, but like a conductor pausing the orchestra mid-measure. "I am not here to scream," he said. "I am not here to make a scene for the sake of the scene. I am here to state facts in the only place they matter, publicly enough that lies don't have room to live." He looked at Scott. "You have been entering my home during the day. You have a key to my gate. You've used it. You are no longer welcome on my property. Ever." Scott's jaw shifted like he'd just met a door that refused to open. "We can—" he started, then saw Lila's face and thought better of finishing. Lila looked like a woman holding broken crystal, trying to decide whether to bleed or save the table. Daniel turned to Olivia. "I loved you," he said, a past tense not used as a weapon but as a map. "I have been steady because I believed steadiness was the best kind of love. Maybe I was wrong about what you wanted. I was not wrong about what I deserved." Olivia swallowed. Something in her softened. Something else braced. She began, then took a breath that sounded like surrender. I am sorry, she said, and it was the first sentence in days that felt like English. Daniel nodded once, a courtesy to the truth when it finally arrived. Here's what happens next, he said, and he kept his voice even. You will leave tonight. Your suitcase is in the front hall. The locks will be changed tomorrow. Maple is staying with me. We'll talk about the rest with lawyers present and calendars open. She flinched as if he'd tossed water, and it had been fire. Tonight, she said, as if the word had new edges. Tonight, he said. I am not angry enough to be cruel. I am also not soft enough to be foolish. Scott stepped forward, as if the correct posture could retroactively fix a thing. Daniel! Daniel's gaze cut to him, calm as a blade. If you speak my name again in this house, it will be in the presence of a police report. Please leave. Carlos shifted slightly. The friend who could become security if necessary. He didn't have to. Scott looked at Lila for rescue and found that her face had become a lighthouse in a storm for someone else. She took a breath, like an oath. Get out, she told her husband, and her voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Go, she repeated when he hesitated. Don't make me remind you of all the ways you have underestimated me. Scott went. The door closed on the sound of neighbor kids still playing in the street, riding figure eights not designed to intersect with adult catastrophe. The room remained, a collection of people who had not planned to be an audience, and now were an archive. I'm sorry you had to see that, Daniel said to the neighbors, because he had been raised to pick up trash, and also to apologize for other people's poor aim. Please enjoy dessert. When you go, take something. Tart, cookies, a plant. Please relieve my house of some sweetness. Someone let out a strangled, grateful laugh at the mercy in it. People murmured things like, "We're here," and "Call me," and "If you need anything," phrases that were not currency so much as receipts, that proved they had not stood idly by. Naomi approached, a wet shine in her eyes. Dan, she said, the syllable a small, honest ache. He hugged her once. Take care of her out there, he said, meaning Lila. Naomi nodded. She would. Olivia stood in the foyer, fingers on the handle of the suitcase Daniel had indeed placed there. A quiet act louder than any accusation. She looked back at him, the house cross-sectioned between them like a model. Living room full of witnesses, hallway empty, bedroom down the line that had held 100 ordinary mornings. I wish you'd told me you were lonely, Daniel said. I would have understood. I would have missed with you. We could have fixed that together. Olivia's mouth trembled. I didn't want to be the one who broke the thing we had by saying it wasn't enough. You didn't say it, he replied. You did something else. She nodded once, because there was no arguing with a ledger that had numbers in it now. I'm sorry, she said again. The words landed, tired, but real. He opened the door. Night had settled soft and thick, the streetlights gentler than they had any right to be. She rolled the suitcase out. On the porch, she paused, half turning, like a dancer in a pose she hated to hold, because it hurt. You're a good man, Daniel, she said. I forgot. That meant you were also a man who could choose himself. He didn't answer because there was nothing to add. The door clicked shut. The house exhaled. Maple came and leaned her head against his knee, tail moving slow, a metronome for a calmer song. Neighbors began to filter out, quiet as if leaving a church. Thank yous were whispered. Hands squeezed. Lila squeezed his hand, too. A silent thank you for naming something that might have kept her in a fog for months. She left alone, shoulders squared. Carlos stayed. They cleaned in the automatic rhythm of men who've done chore charts and deployments, and everything in between that teaches you to do the next simple thing. Plates to sink, forks to dishwasher, air returning to rooms. When the counters gleamed again, Daniel turned off the TV. The screen held his face a moment, faint in the reflection, then surrendered it back to the room. "You okay?" Carlos asked. "No," Daniel said. "Yes." He stopped, searching for the version that wasn't a lie. "I'm not ruined." Carlos nodded. "Good sentence." They stood in the kitchen that had hosted so many breakfasts and 3 betrayals, and Daniel realized the camera was still watching them. He reached up and clicked it off. It felt like closing the eyes of a witness who had done its job. In the days that followed, change moved through the house at a pace Daniel could live with. The locksmith came Monday morning. Teresa, the lawyer, recommended a mediator who valued clean lines and quiet rooms. Olivia sent a message about picking up boxes. He told her when. She came at that time. They did not use the camera to negotiate their grief. The neighbors sent casseroles because decency has a scent, and it's baked pasta. Naomi and Lila had coffee on the porch and spoke in the low tones of women who have decided to build new structures out of old lumber. Scott moved out to a rental near his warehouse. His SUV learned the geography of a different set of streets. One night, under a moon that pretended it wasn't hung from a cable, Daniel took Maple for a walk. The neighborhood looked like itself again, which felt like both a comfort and a betrayal. A kid's scooter lay in a yard. Wind bells made shy noises. Somewhere, a TV laughed on a sitcom's schedule. At the corner, Naomi fell into step with him. "I keep replaying it," she confessed. "The freeze frame of what we think we know versus the tape." He nodded. "Me too." He paused, then added, "I didn't want a performance." "It wasn't," she said. "It was testimony." He smiled, a real one that surprised him on his own face. "I'll take that." Back home, he stood in the living room where the revelation had happened and listened to the new quiet. It wasn't empty. It was space. He could choose what to put there. He brewed coffee the next morning because ritual is a raft. He sliced an orange and let the scent wake the rooms. He fed Maple, who had accepted the update to her pack with less drama than the humans. He opened the French doors and let clean air in, a small, radical act. He didn't check the camera. He didn't need to. He knew what the kitchen looked like when it told the truth. 2 weeks later, he attended the PTA meeting because it was on his calendar, and because living was now an act of stubbornness he found he liked. Lila chaired with quiet authority. When someone asked about fundraising, Daniel volunteered to run the numbers. He didn't mention that he'd spent the last month learning how much he valued clean math. Afterward, as chairs scraped and politeness reasserted itself in the room's corners, Lila crossed to him. "Thank you," she said. It was all. It was enough. He walked home under a sky that had the decency to be changeable. Back in the kitchen, he poured himself a glass of water and stood at the island. He ran his hand over the granite. It was cool, indifferent, faithful. He raised the glass slightly, like a toast to a person he was learning to like again. "To small things, adding up," he said into the room and took a drink. The house breathed, like it always had. Daniel breathed with it, and this time the rhythm felt like his.